The latest Grenada news is at 10:40, but first ITN.
From ITN News at 10 with John Suchet.
Europe's beef ban, major pledges a British fight back. Rabin's smiling assassin goes to prison for life. Racism in the ranks, an order to end the prejudice. And on top of the world, the new face of superpower cooperation. Good evening. The European ban on British beef and beef products was endorsed unanimously today by the European Commission. But it's to review it after 6 weeks and said it would help with compensation for our farmers. It's asking for fortnightly reports on precisely what Britain is doing to control mad cow disease. John Major said tonight he would be announcing a package of measures as quickly as possible to restore confidence in beef, but it wouldn't be ready for cabinet approval tomorrow. Our political editor, Michael Brunson, reports.
The bad news given to the European Parliament by the Agriculture Commissioner is that the worldwide ban on British beef and anything made from it stays. The better news that it's no longer necessarily a 2-year ban.
I'm glad that it's been changed compared with what was originally proposed. First of all, it's a temporary ban now, and it's going to be looked at again in 6 weeks' time in the light of what's come up.
But one immediate result of the European Commission's confirmation of the ban was the news from Holland that thousands of British calves exported there will now be destroyed. That in turn, however, is encouraging the Commission to offer financial help.
The amount will be discussed under the normal procedures with the UK government. So I do think that, frankly, we are showing a concrete approach to this, which is a common problem. It's not only a UK problem.
But the fact remains that the only place on earth where British beef can now be eaten is in Britain, and that's happening less and less. Today, this abattoir at Perth in Scotland became one of the latest to lay off workers, which is why the Prime Minister has confirmed in an interview with HTV that what he calls a package, almost certainly of selective slaughter, is now being prepared.
Now, it is quite possible that that package will go beyond what is regarded as necessary by the scientists simply for market reasons. Now, it must be successful when we introduce that package. So it is necessary for us to discuss it with the European Union, agree it, and then discuss it with others so we're confident that it will actually succeed. We are looking at that. I cannot promise it you as soon as after Cabinet tomorrow. It won't be that speedy, I'm afraid.
And a Commons committee heard today that if, when the package comes, that'll be as quickly as possible, said Mr Major, it is the slaughter of cattle at the end of their working life, the cost could be enormous.
The initial cost, and one would immediately think there might be others as well, would certainly be of the order of 550 million.
And roughly the same in subsequent years, said Mr Hogg. Also at the hearing, disturbing confirmation from the head of the scientific committee advising the government that new slaughterhouse regulations brought in 7 years ago were not being properly observed even as late as last year.
It was disturbing last year on the basis of unannounced inspections of slaughterhouses that the regulations that had been put in place were not being adhered to on a scale that was uncomfortably high.
But that, ministers insisted after the hearing, would only have increased by a very small amount what was in any case a small risk, they say, to humans. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
And joining us now from Westminster, our political editor, Michael Brunson. And Michael, that package of measures the Prime Minister spoke about there, what news on that tonight?
There's been yet another meeting of ministers in Downing Street tonight, chaired by the Prime Minister, working on the package. And tomorrow, I'm told, Ministry of Agriculture officials will be going back to Brussels, starting continuing intensive negotiations with Brussels about the level of compensation we might get and help. You know, it's clear now that nothing less, effectively, is going to satisfy public confidence here than a selective slaughter policy, and Brussels will want something of that nature as well. And, of course, taking that forward, this whole issue could be helped by Mr Major attending the meeting of heads of European governments in Turin on Friday.
Thank you, Michael. A clear picture is emerging now of just how catastrophically beef sales have fallen in this last week. The Co-op says its sales are down by 70%. Thousands of slaughterhouse workers have been laid off, and farmers, some of them facing bankruptcy, were tonight demanding action. Here's our business editor, Mark Webster.
Threatened with ruin, hundreds of angry East Anglian farmers packed this meeting tonight in Newmarket. In the face of their worst crisis since the 60s, most are now reconciled to the idea of a partial animal cull. But many who attended the meeting, like George Simon, are fed up with the delays and the uncertainty. He's already extended his overdraft. These one-year-old cattle must go to market in the next 3 months or they'll be past their prime. And he says many farmers, like him and his wife, are getting desperate.
I've been walking around in a daze, and both of us have the last few days, and I think if something daft was done, I wouldn't be surprised if a large number of people don't end up committing suicide, to a much higher degree than anyone is ever going to die from getting CJD from eating beef.
Farmers here say since their beef is entirely safe, if the government orders a partial slaughter, it will be largely a public relations exercise. Thousands of other cattle farmers around the country face the same problem. With only a limited window in which to sell their beef cattle, they fear that after that, some will face bankruptcy. That's why they want urgent action from the government to do something to restore public confidence in buying British beef. Sales of beef in co-op supermarkets are down 70% over the past week, and there's no sign of a recovery. That appears to reflect the national picture, so stores have just stopped buying British beef.
We still have product on our shelves from what we bought before all of this started. Right now, there is very little demand amongst our customers, so it would be foolish for us to go on buying.
Jobs are at risk. Half the staff at this Wiltshire meat processing plant have been laid off, so have more than 7,000 abattoir workers. Tonight, McDonald's took delivery of its first Dutch beef burgers, as British farmers demanded action to save their livelihoods and their industry. Mark Webster News at 10, East Anglia.
Yigal Amir, the man who assassinated the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in November, was jailed for life today for premeditated murder. In his final statement from the dock, Amir said everything he did for God and Israel. Our Middle East correspondent Robert Moore reports from the courthouse in Tel Aviv.
The assassin was led into court for the final time. Yigal Amir confesses to the crime, even celebrates it, saying it was God who pulled the trigger. Not just the murder, but the arrogance of Amir has shocked Israelis. But today the man who says the killing of the Prime Minister was sanctioned by ancient Jewish law confronted modern Israeli justice, and his religious arguments were swept away by the judges with contempt. He stood up to hear the verdict. Guilty of the premeditated murder of Yitzhak Rabin, and guilty of wounding a bodyguard. The assassination itself was filmed by an amateur cameraman. Amir can be seen in the crowd moving to the right, and then once Rabin has passed, he lunges forward, firing, hitting the Prime